Good morning. My name is Dr. Paul Kershaw. I'm a policy professor at the University of BC School of Population Health and the founder of Generation Squeeze. We promote fairness for young and old alike so that all generations can count on a healthy childhood, a healthy home, a healthy retirement, and a healthy planet. I've come to Ottawa today because we all know Canada is entering a period of heightened geopolitical instability and economic uncertainty. And in moments like this, national resilience doesn't simply depend on our military and on our diplomacy. It also depends on whether our fiscal policy is strong, credible, and future-oriented. Today, I'm joined by video by an inspiring group of Canadian retirees who believe that fiscal responsibility is part of patriotism. And in collaboration with Generation Squeeze, they have come publicly to say they are ready to give back. Specifically, they are willing to take less from old age security because they do not fully need the subsidy. And they do so that Canada's public finances are better prepared for the challenges ahead. This is not a fringe view. Polling conducted by Research Co. shows that 75% of Canadians, including 3/4 of retirees, support asking retired households that have six-figure incomes to receive smaller old age security subsidies. And what you're about to see will bring that polling to life. Currently, Canada spends approximately $83 billion a year on old age security, far more than any other line item in the federal budget. And roughly $14 billion of that total flows to retirees and households with six-figure incomes. Because under existing rules, households earning up to $182,000 will still receive the roughly $18,000 full subsidy for OAS. The retirees you are about to hear from are asking Parliament to modernize OAS so that much of this $14 billion can be better targeted to the common good while keeping faith with both older and younger generations. May I ask you to hit the video, please?
I have qualified for the OAS, and it seems a little bit ridiculous to me because, as I just said, I'm basically a millionaire on paper anyway. I don't need the money.
I think there are a number of other people like me that do not need OAS.
I would give it all up because I can afford to.
It makes no sense to me that I receive old age security. I'm not poor, I'm not struggling, and yet I receive a bonus every month for simply being a senior.
To say that somebody earning over $100,000 a year needs a supplement to their income from the federal treasury really doesn't make much sense.
And we don't need and don't want OAS any longer.
I would like to see social policy that made the OAS payment based on actual needs. It's just unconscionable that I get to go golfing or get on an airplane while someone can't even afford their rent.
We need to be asked, and we need to be challenged, and we need to be made aware, most importantly, of the trade-offs. And it's putting such a burden in every way on the generations that follow. An earner with young children, their income is being clawed back before a senior. I just don't know how we justify that.
I and many others like me believe the government has an urgent moral responsibility to redress this glaring inequity.
My children and their cohorts are struggling to make ends meet. Many have gig employment and can barely pay rent, food, and other essentials. For them, retirement is for the well-off.
What we should be doing with the funds is ensuring that low-income seniors can be topped up to a point where they're comfortable.
The data shows that 3/4 of seniors actually are okay with taking a reduced amount if they already have household incomes of $100,000.
I'm quite in agreement that the threshold for clawing back the OAS be reduced substantially.
I know that if OAS were to pay fewer seniors, it would have, in the same budget, more cash available to subsidize poorer seniors somewhat better.
I think what's being proposed is a pretty painless proposal that would still cover off seniors living in poverty, but take it away from people like me who don't need it.
It really behooves any government to take a look at these to ensure that the benefits are going to the people who really need them.
Especially at this time in Canada's history, we are all going to be called on to make some sacrifices.
And for most of us, that wouldn't be a big sacrifice.
So I think it's important for people to speak out and let politicians know that, no, you're not going to get killed at the ballot box if you do something like this.
It sounds to me like a win-win.
We have to think beyond ourselves.
You've just heard from retirees who are ready to stand up for Canada by taking smaller OAS subsidies so that our country can be stronger. In order of appearance, there was Peter Ladner, John Kelly, Stephanie Van Slyke, Harry Grossmith, Glenn Bailey, Victor Grostern, Lisa Gordon, Beth Jefferson, Mary Pearson, Richard Swan, and Peter Kirby. Interviews can be arranged with them. They are part of a growing group of older Canadians who recognize that modernizing OAS can eliminate seniors' poverty while also accelerating investments in housing, post-secondary, childcare, and youth employment, supports that matter deeply to their children's and grandchildren's generations. Parliament now has a rare opportunity to deliver a defining policy breakthrough, modernizing old age security in a way that frees up billions of dollars, improves affordability and economic security across generations, and does so without spending more or raising tax rates. These retirees have shown leadership. Now we ask Parliament to do the same. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Very good to see you again. I think the last time I saw you was last fall, just before the federal budget. Obviously, I know this is your big initiative, but did you see anything in the budget that you liked in terms of generational fairness?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that it's fair to say that 2025 didn't deliver progress on the previous budget, which had been organized entirely around the promise of fairness for every generation. And I'm willing to be patient on that front because we had a significant transition in government after an election. And so it took some time, I think, for the new government to, come up to speed with the momentum from before. But going forward, we need to recognize that the 2025 federal budget offered next to no new money for youth unemployment. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has pointed out that the 2025 federal budget actually plans to cut spending on housing, which is a far cry from the generational investments in housing that we've been hearing about. So going forward, we need to be renewing the national housing strategy. We are going to need to invest more in youth employment. You have childcare advocacy groups having just put out a letter this week saying, please, federal and provincial leaders, meet your $10 a day commitments in order to ensure that funding for those kinds of initiatives that matter for younger people grow. More money is going to need to be spent, but we are already running a $78 billion deficit. So where do we find the dollars? These retirees who admit they are financially secure are offering our country the path forward. They're willing to take less to levels that free up billions of dollars, getting close to $14 billion a year, which is in many regards larger than the entire federal expenditure review is going to ever be able to produce when trying to skimp and save across dozens and dozens of departments. This one policy, because it is the biggest, can free us on a path to better stabilize our fiscal foundation and invest in mandate priorities for this government. So that's what, looking forward, I'm aiming to see for the 2026 budget, though the 2025 budget didn't produce much progress.
Sure. And thinking back to that 2024 federal budget, one of the really big generational fairness initiatives was that change to the capital gains inclusion rates. I think it would have principally affected secondary properties, second homes, cottages, etc. He ended up having a massive backlash to that. That was walked back by now Prime Minister Mark Carney. So I mean, how do you prevent the same sort of backlash to touching something that for many political parties is considered a third rail of Canadian politics?
That's a great question. Well, first, for my lab at UBC and for Generation Squeeze more generally, the change of the capital gains inclusion rate wasn't actually one of the recommendations that we were that we'd been organizing around. So that really matters, because I think when the federal government launched that initiative, they actually didn't have a constituency saying, we want this. What I've showed you today is that we don't need to think about touching old age security being the third rail any longer. We have many retirees who recognize that it is the biggest part of the federal budget and that it is disproportionately driving the deficit. If you just look at the annual increase in spending from 2014 through to 2029, that's the latest year we have a budget projection, annual spending on old age security will increase by $60 billion a year. That amount will be equivalent to the entire deficit projected for 2029. And so it's not the case that we don't need old age security. There are 400,000 poor retirees. But when you're spending $80+ billion right now on old age security, no senior should be poor. And so our proposal would ask financially secure retirees to take less. Many are willing to do so. That would free up our ability to add $5,000 for every one of the seniors who falls below our official poverty measure, virtually eliminating seniors' poverty. That is a political goal that no party is going to argue against. And even on top of that, it still frees dollars to add an extra $1.5 billion for housing, $1.5 billion a year for childcare, $1.5 billion for youth employment. It could cover the entire GST credit increase that was just announced. That's the scale of the change that we're talking about, which is why the patriotism that our seniors are demonstrating in this video is so important in this moment, because there are not very many other ways that as we try and secure our country's fiscal foundation, make sure that affordability happens domestically while we take on these international threats, there are very few other ways to actually find comparable dollars.
I guess if there aren't any other questions, kind of on the opposite side, you have a number of organized interests that are strongly in favor of the status quo. So I'm thinking of the CARP, to a certain extent I'm thinking of the Bloc. What is a good faith read of their intention, and what's a way to engage those folks and sort of bring them over to your side of thinking?
It is the case that the Canadian Association of Retired Persons leadership is opposed to what I'm saying. Full disclosure, it would be a misrepresentation to suggest otherwise. But many of the people that you hear in these videos are actually members of CARP, and they are actually actively writing to their CARP leadership saying, hey, we need to rethink your public position. I'm not sure if that will change. I would encourage CARP to do so, because CARP currently doesn't have a plan to eliminate seniors' poverty. So that makes me worried that CARP's more about advocating for financially secure retirees, not those who are financially marginalized. But the Bloc, there's an opportunity with the Bloc. We are actually talking about freeing up so much money by changing the threshold for old age security. And if we add to it a couple of tax expenditures that most Canadians are barely aware of, but add up to $7 billion. One is the age credit, one is the pension income credit, and low-income retirees can't get these things. If we were to consider those dollars as well, we actually could do the following. We could say to the Bloc, we will pay for the $3 billion required to add the extra 10% to OAS benefits for all retirees, not just those over 75. So give the Bloc what it wants, but still start clawing back the OAS at $100,000 of household income, not the current level of $182,000. If you put those two things together, we can have multiple win-wins. The Bloc gets what it wants. We still have the dollars to actually add $5,000 for every poor retiree and eliminate seniors' poverty. And it would leave about $8.5 billion left over to accelerate investments in the things that matter to retirees' kids and grandchildren. So I think actually the politics can bring the Bloc in a minority parliament to play with this initiative and give the current government a signature achievement for promoting generational fairness and really investing in the Prime Minister's mandate letter goals. He has one mandate letter. They're very crystal clear about what they want to do. They're short on dollars. The 2025 federal budget made it clear they're short on dollars. This is a pathway to free up a significant chunk of those dollars.
And last question. So there are a small number of expensive kind of housing and urban markets in Canada. I would guess they have a disproportionate number of seniors. So Vancouver, Point Grey, or UBC would be one of them. Victoria might be another. These are places where plausibly, having a six-figure retirement income doesn't necessarily mean you're rolling in and have have disposable income to burn when you factor in the cost of living, when you factor in property taxes and all the expenses at a municipal level. Is there some consideration for some of the retired folks that happen to live in some of these more expensive markets and want to age in place?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I think the data show, though, something slightly different. If you were talking about a 35-year-old who has a six-figure income in Toronto or Vancouver or Victoria, Hamilton, I would say just what you described is absolutely accurate because they've entered into the housing market more recently when home values have gone up so much that those higher home values for them mean higher rents, larger mortgages. But if you're actually someone with six figures in retirement today and you live in Toronto or Vancouver, you are especially likely to be a homeowner and have been a homeowner for decades, which means that those high home values are actually amplifying your wealth far more than your income ever has. And so there might be a few retirees who could be house rich and cash poor, but then they would already be getting the old age security supplements, right? When their incomes are below 91,000 individually, 182 at the couple level, they're getting the OAS. So if they're cash poor and house rich, they're getting the subsidy, even if they have millions of dollars in housing wealth when they live in Point Grey. So the proposal that we have on the table, as echoed by these kinds of retirees, is saying we are asking the financially secure. Right now, OAS largely measures that in terms of income. Your question invites us to do a better job of actually measuring people's wealth, because I write a column every other Saturday in the Globe and Mail in the personal finance section. And right next to my column is something called the financial facelift. And what we have in that financial facelift is often Canadians, typically older, asking for financial advice about how to manage their finances. And their stories will feature what you've just sort of drawn attention to. They'll have millions in assets, and they'll say, how can I make sure that I maximize the benefit that I get from old age security? And their financial advisors are now primed to do what the laws allow them to do, to organize their finances, to keep growing their assets while bringing in that $18,000 household subsidy. I don't think when we are running a $78 billion deficit in this country that that's the kind of wealth management around this large subsidy that we want to have. We want to be targeting that OAS subsidy to those who are more financially insecure and especially to poor retirees.
So agreeing with a lot of what you just said, does your response potentially omit some of the medical costs that come with aging, even in a country like Canada with universal health care, even things like installing a wheelchair ramp or mobility aids in your home, potentially at-home care, all of those things add up as well. And is that part of the hidden costs maybe we don't see when we look at this big, complicated question of generational fairness?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well. And we do know that there are different unique kinds of costs that come with aging. I love your example of renovating the home to support mobility issues. I think on that front, we have a range of tax credits that are designed to help support that. I think when you have $182,000 of household income, you're actually quite well positioned to manage a lot of those costs, especially when you're likely to have decent equity in your home and not a mortgage. You're not paying rent. That said, I think if we push you beyond your home renovation for accessibility to a broader set of concerns, something I would hear would be, well, what about I have to plan for long-term care. I'm fine now, but maybe when I'm 88, I won't be fine. And I'm going to have to be putting out thousands of dollars a month to not be in my home, but to be in long-term care. And I think that absolutely is something our country needs to be planning for. But you don't plan to fix an underdeveloped long-term care system by saying we're going to keep a blunt, inefficient old age security system. And so it could be that some of the savings we reap from lowering the phase-out level, lowering the phase-out threshold for OAS, some of those dollars could potentially be used to then buttress a long-term care system. I'm open to that conversation. Because at bottom, what we need right now is solidarity between young and old. Like, we're not pitting generations against one another here. We have retirees saying they want to do their patriotic duty to secure the financial foundation of this country so we can eliminate seniors' poverty and invest in their kids' and grandchildren's generation. That's the kind of solidarity we need at this moment of increased precarity and insecurity domestically and globally. And I am delighted to say that I think we are recommending one federal pathway forward that can deliver so much of that.
And just one quick question for clarity. I probably could have emailed you about this, but since I have you in front of me, the Peter Ladner you referred to, is that the individual who was kind of a center-right NPA politician, mayoral candidate in Vancouver for several years?
That is correct.
I have no questions online. If you want to ask anything or add anything, you're welcome to. If not, this concludes.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well. I think that's a great wrap.
All right, this will conclude our press conference. Merci beaucoup. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse.
Merci. Bonne journée.